Hey everyone, welcome to Music Medicine and Machines YouTube channel and meetup. As you know, we're still social distancing, so we're continuing the videos content for our audience. We like to get together and talk about machine learning, data analytics, and of course, music and all things healthcare. So today with me, I have Justin Fanelli, who is a technical director at the Naval Warfare Intelligence Center. Do I have that right, Justin?
Information Warfare Center. All the letters were there. We're acronym-tastic. Yes.
Well, there we go. There we go. So thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. I know you and I were riffing earlier this week about your passion for music. So what have been some of the things that you've been really digging into in the past couple of weeks as it relates to music?
Yeah, more time than ever to listen to music during COVID. You can kind of blast out. It's a little bit different from the office environment, whether it's headphones or not. I've been experimenting a little bit with like matching songs to moods in terms of like the actual task that you have to accomplish. If we have this in common, and I suspect most people who are working from home right now do, boundaries are tough, and going from the work day to the not work day, potentially back to the work day, all in the same day, can be tough. So I've played a little bit with music as transitions, or like needing something upbeat in the evening when I have to get a task out. So kind of matching the beats per minute with where we want our heart rates to be. So I guess most recently, some like faster classical helps me without like distracting too much, kind of low volume, but anything with violin that really starts to speed up. So one of the things that I enjoy a lot is there's an album by an Italian pianist called Petrichor. That is really I just haven't gotten tired of, and I've tried, but it's just it's a killer.
Now, he's more modern, isn't he? He's more contemporary.
Yep.
Yeah.
So throwback style. Yeah, I mean the classics paved the way, right? So I'm by no means an expert on that, but like you had asked me earlier in the week, like who my favorite was, and it's Beethoven, but I've kind of doubled down on that in terms of since that conversation, probably 6 hours later of Beethoven, still the reigning champ.
Yeah. Yeah. For a long time, I was like, who's my favorite composer? And, Mozart is so groundbreaking because he was, really like the one that became the rock star of classical music. But I would have to say Beethoven was so innovative because at the end of his life, he had there were some like explosions outside of his home that caused him to be deaf. So he just really had to rely on the vibration of the music to really kind of create that masterpiece. So that's one thing I love about him, is that he continued on with his passion, and in fact, it just really accelerated his talent.
Yeah, and that gives you some insight into like how actually dense his brain was in terms of like all of the connections already, right? Like he had it. Like you could actually remove hearing from that for all intents and purposes, and everything was still there. I think that kind of more so than anything, like in addition to his resilience, that just demonstrates that greatness. I do think of those two, I'd rather see a Netflix show on Beethoven. Right now, Mozart is the only one with one, so we'll leave it at that until the streaming folks pick up on this video podcast and take our word for it.
Take our idea, right? And I kind of want to lead into this because we were talking about hip hop too, but you've heard of Jay Dilla from the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So a DJ friend introduced me to him, and I just became fascinated with Jay Dilla, especially how he really gets into the sounds too, and then how do you splice the sound and where you put it in the beat and in the music. and the repetition. And I would have to say for the hip hop renaissance, he is the Beethoven for hip hop, really, because he just unleashed a whole new sound. I mean, there's others that came before him and kind of set the tone, kind of like Mozart did for Beethoven. And I think Jay Dilla was really like the one who ushered in a new renaissance for hip hop, especially in between 90 and 93, with Tribe Called Quest and then many of the others that kind of were a part of that movement in the early 90s.
Nice. Cool. So your mental model is many Mozarts, one Jay Dilla in this case, one Beethoven. Who is at the center of that Mozart mind map for hip hop?
I hadn't thought of it that way. I think the sound today, when you look at it, it's really kind of gone off in a lot of directions. So I don't know if there's really anybody that's a central focal point. I mean, in the 2000s, Timbaland kind of came in with those really super hard, hot and heavy beats, and he really defined the sound. Even into pop music, he was really bringing a lot of the hip hop into the pop and making it way more mainstream. So I guess it just depends on what you're looking at. I would still say Jay Dilla is as influential now today as he was then. I think his sound is going to continue to be. And, my little secret hope is that he's going to be more memorialized. I think he is probably one of the most important early defining influences of the early part of hip hop. And when you go back and you listen to some of his sound clips, especially some of the stuff that is lesser known, when he got way more creative right before his death, it's really still kind of very unusual. The sounds are very strange. Even today, I think a lot of his stuff is very groundbreaking. And I guess for me personally, I would put him very much close to the center. But I think the sound and hip hop has changed so much that it's hard to say who's at the center. It's so mainstream nowadays, and there's so many parts of it that is mainstream that I think it's hard to say who's at the center. We could say who sells the most records, and that is influential in itself. But when I think of hip hop and when I come to it as a form of music, I look more towards, the folks that are really being groundbreaking. They're breaking barriers, they're stretching the limits with sound, or, maybe they're very independent. So, I tend to stay away from the more mainstream sounds nowadays. I think they're still important, and they have their place. But for me, it's just, when I look for influential music, I think I look more towards the underground because that's where the real art is.
I wonder if, so I'm going to speak out of school as opposed to old school. I wonder how much machine learning has been applied to kind of the influences over time. There's certainly what people say, so you can have like a lineage or a tree. But I just wonder if, here is for rock when the Beatles happened, and then songs got simpler and catchier, and I wonder what models exist music side of the Human Genome Project with everything that's been captured digitally. They're pretty good at picking what songs I want to hear or what types of music I like. I'll have to look at influences and get back on that.
Yeah, I mean, if we had to, I think I'm kind of showing my age with my, with my affiliation and my affinity for Jay Dilla so much. But, I think a lot of people will say, Wu-Tang Clan was the center of the universe for hip hop in the 90s. Tribe Called Quest was extremely influential, very much so in the early 90s. And some of the artists are still very influential today, like Phife Dawg. A lot of people just loved the way he rapped. And, MF Doom, who just passed away recently, he was very groundbreaking more in the mid to late 2000s. So, today I think we're kind of missing out on some of that more up and coming artistry because I think, everything is so commercialized and so wrapped up in a box, that it's made more for consumption and entertainment than really being meaningful, right?
Yeah,
So I would have to there's a lot of stuff that I like that is mainstream, but most of it's just made for pure entertainment value nowadays. It just doesn't really make you think.
sure. I mean, the interesting thing, I just remember my friends who were listening to Tribe when other people weren't, and it wasn't really mainstream at the time, but like there was a depth to it. Um, I don't know what the corollary is. I hope there's some music being made along those lines now, but it seemed like they still had that choice whether to be popular or do something of meaning, and they just made the choice. It might be a tougher choice now when there's more money in your face, but it's interesting to see that the people who made that choice have had a more lasting impact. I mean, certainly their amount of talent was a big factor in that, but it does seem like their competition at the time, their money may not have lasted as long as Fife Dog's influence.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and then just personal factors come in, and they impact the ability of a group to stay together. Groups like to go out and do their own albums. I mean, Wu-Tang Clan is kind of that example. It was really just a coalition of artists coming together to rap on certain albums, and then they all went out and did their own stuff. I mean, and so Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre. I mean, Dr. Dre dropped like less than 3 albums, and he's so influential even today, but he's more about selling kind of like the headphone technology. So he's still very cutting edge and involved in music. He just kind of pivoted in different ways. And even Beyonce, I think a lot of her stuff is very mainstream, very commercial, but very influential, and she makes it with meaning. Though she has targeted messaging that appeals to a very broad audience. People love that message. They do find it very what's the word, it's very invoking to them. So I think there are ways to still kind of straddle that commercial success and still provide meaningful songs to your audience. And so she definitely does that. She's come out with videos that kind of combine with the music, so you're also looking at visual performance art, and she's really just perfected that over the years. Shakira, still very commercial. She has a worldwide appeal. She brings a lot of Hispanic influences, and then even African influences into her music, and African style tribal dance. So she brings a really kind of world vibe to her stuff. So, I guess it just depends on what we're looking at in terms of the artistry and the music. So
yeah, the interesting thing that occurs to me about those two at least is like there's an integration factor, right? So and that maybe has been like a longer theme, but like there are a lot of good performers, there are a lot of good voices, but it maybe being great at two things goes further, right? So Shakira, certainly the dance, the vibe, the integrating different cultures is kind of her calling card. Beyonce is making several choices before she gets to pick the script, right? But she's making several choices before like she really zeroes in on something that's her brand or not. And even Dr. Dre, I suspect that behind the scenes, so there's the indirect influence of, hey, people listen to the Chronic and it lasted, and like he doesn't say much, and so for that reason, like and his NWA affiliation, like that might sell headphones, but I suspect that he is behind the scenes, just like the I don't know, lobbyists in DC, like making things happen, making moves, connecting people, and just directly influencing things, as well as the indirect ripple effects of just what he's doing for culture. So that kind of conjures just more popular. I went back and watched Michael Jackson's Super Bowl performance, just because it seems like every male who's done the Super Bowl, like just single solo male has done the Super Bowl, has been like a almost a parody of Michael Jackson's, like I think it was '94 Super Bowl. Like, so people are just obsessed with that. And then Madonna, like the way that people stay current, it does help to have like a two-prong attack.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it definitely helps if you can do more than one thing, and then also in the business world. I mean, Title just sold for I think close to well, definitely above 250 million to Square Inc. I think. And so when you look at headlines like that, it kind of makes you think what's going on. I think we're also in a newer market too, where we have all these streaming platforms, we have YouTube and all that stuff. So it'd be interesting to see what kind of independent artists really break out and kind of break the numbers and break records and growing organically themselves. There are artists that I follow that, they almost do everything in terms of how they approach music. So it'll be interesting over the next couple of years to see what happens in the music industry for sure.
Yeah, the future waves of Bieber as the decades go.
Right. So I know we spent a little bit of time on music. If you don't mind, just let's pivot a little bit. Do you mind just telling us like what is your role at your organization and kind of maybe some of the things that you're working on a general level?
Sure. So a couple roles, but I guess one that I'm most passionate about, or just care a ton in terms of like the potential impact, is the healthcare work we're doing. It's where I met you, so, which was at a HIMSS conference. I did a panel. What was that? It was pre-COVID, so probably 18 months ago at this point.
Yeah.
And it's felt like 36, 72. But yeah, so the part of that is like, what can we do within the federal, like, so specifically for our service members, how do we tee up the blocking and tackling of that data to allow for more AI opportunities? So it's kind of crazy how much we're seeing and how many people of every profession at this point. I have teachers telling me about AI, like grade school teachers, right? And so how wide that has gone, getting back to, hey, do we have good data to do that? So I'll answer your question. One of my main goals and areas within my job at at NIWIC is for Defense Health Agency to really collect and ensure high quality data with depth and breadth in a really big way. And that's just an amazing agency and serving an incredible body of warfighters and families and constituents in general.
Yeah, and so yeah, that I do remember you coming to HIMSS, and I think we were talking about healthcare data analytics and how do we really use the data to improve care. I know we also had somebody from VA, so that's a kind of a good crossover for you. Is you have the active duty service member. How do you provide support medically around the world? Some of it might be in theater, some of it might be out. What's the situation like when you're the internet connection might not be so great? What do you do then? How do you get the information? And then of course you're part of an organization that also has to provide transition. Eventually the service members become veterans, so how do they transition to veterans care? And then of course on the health and human services side, we have Medicare and Medicaid beneficiaries. HRSA is providing healthcare to underserved and very rural populations. So it's just it's funny how we have to approach the data for each different group, but they might travel through all of those, I would say, programs or systems at some point in time. I mean, how do you approach a service member, leaving service and then transitioning to VA? How's that approached within military health?
Sure. So, I mean, in terms of the specific systems, internet standards and protocols, we hear a lot about that across healthcare. Something that's pretty neat within the federal government, like so specifically for the population that we're looking at, is relationships make a difference. And so the idea of the VA and DoD singling up on electronic health record, that's going to make a difference. But even within particular meetings and groups, just the idea of working along shoulder to shoulder alongside these folks from VA, from CDC, realizing that data is data and it needs to move, and we need to keep it secure and private, and how that actually flows. I'm pretty excited about just the cadre of talent associated with that, like the kind of turn towards data is whether it's the new oil or blockchain or black or orange or whatever good thing that data is. I think people recognize its importance at this point. So that as a core competency within government operations, and then the strong teaming across agencies, I think that knocks down a lot of obstacles that may even be trickier. I'm not speaking, I guess, authoritatively as someone within the private sector, but it's pretty nice to be able to be connected and friendly and not competitive with all of our partners across those different services, and take those issues one at a time, work them out, and then look at how that maps into a bigger picture to go further faster.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I mean, the technology is so critical, having those integration points, really improves the care, makes it more seamless and transition. If people have like an allergy, you want to make sure it replicates across systems. How does that travel? But you bring up a really important part. At the end of the day, it's the humans that are driving the healthcare, and the relationships are so important. So I know you guys kind of made that joint decision with VA to purchase Cerner, essentially. How has that kind of played into the human relationship development? I'm sure there's a lot more teamwork across your organization and Veterans Affairs. Are you finding that you're interfacing with them a lot more?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't there prior to the Cerner decision, but at this point, I mean, just squarely or purely at a minimum from a vocabulary perspective, and instead of talking through abstractions, which can be time consuming, we're talking about specifics, and we can kind of get to the bottom line faster. We can understand from a format perspective. It's just it's a more detailed conversation quicker. And when when there's less friction like that, you can spend a little bit more time, I guess, focused on both what's important, and then also like that manifests as, hey, we're talking about something meaningful. I like talking to these people about something meaningful. So I suspect our predecessors enjoyed them before, but knowing that we're closer to the heart of the matter at this point, I think makes it easier to enjoy and vibe with and jam out with the people who are happen to be in a different building.
Yeah, I like that phrase, jam out. It kind of brings me back to the music, right? So it's good. You can kind of get together and have those conversations and kind of riff a little bit. So if you had to choose one thing that you really enjoy working on, in your current, program and position, what would you say that it was or is?
Sure. So I have a lot of really smart friends and coworkers and colleagues who are laser focused in terms of they've spent their entire lives or their entire last years solving one problem. And DARPA, for instance, just the depth of some of the program managers to just zero in on one particular aspect and then 10 exit or 100 exit. I spend a lot of time kind of looking at a lot of different things. And so that's just kind of how that has played out. And so most recently, I'm a cloud guy because I'm an engineer who's working in the IT space, but it's never really been my passion. But most recently, moving all of the environments and data from on-prem into the cloud. So pretty large time-consuming effort. That made me appreciate how fast you can go when you have all hands on deck. So for all intents and purposes, I'm going to come back to like we have a lot of specific projects that I could go into or that I'm excited about specifically or in particular with a couple agencies who are focused and we're partnering instead of doing our own thing. But kind of the bottom line here is across all of it, for me, a theme of just mid-air refueling with other partners is the piece that I like the most, more so than, or the thing that I get most excited about more so than any particular subject area. I wish I said, I could tell you, hey, regression trees is my passion and we're working one particular COVID project related to regression. So we have that certainly, but for me, it's when I see the the two teams who could be feuding, partnering together. So in the cloud move, there's a layer of abstraction where we have like kind of the network people and the application people, them playing good orchestral music, more orchestral than even jazz towards the end, and kind of like really on the same sheet of music. Was exciting, and similarly kind of doing some of these handoffs where we have some a good amount of AI experts, but pulling in people who are doing amazing things and short-circuiting some of that, doing some of those teaming pieces. That synergy is a big deal. So I'm fighting the urge to list my 17 favorite projects in rank order right now. And I'll just tell you that when things go, when 1 + 1 = 3 with some of these activities and we produce outcomes, that's more important to me than the actual subject matter.
Yeah, I mean, in healthcare, that's what it's all about, is that the outcomes and improving the care delivery for our stakeholders, essentially. So, let's pivot and talk a little bit more about the data. So I know you mentioned you have like 17 projects you're working on, or, obviously you're going to interface with the data at some point. At the level that you can provide certain points of detail, let's say there was a data project you had. Was there something you really enjoyed about it, or was there a challenge that you really dug into and you really enjoyed? Do you think you can talk about one of those from a high level?
From a high level, yeah. So I said 17 randomly. The number is closer to 40. I'm kidding. So in general, like specifics on data, and like a specific data project might be standing up a data catalog, used the IWRP, so an OTA contract going into to government acronym mode real quick, and that'll be your machine. I'll just go acronym only for 3 or 4 minutes, and only government KOs will understand. And KO obviously is contracting officer, because that starts with the C. But the idea of and we haven't talked about this in a long time, as a larger community that I've heard, but that semantic layer and making things easier and more searchable. The one analogy that one of my coworkers likes to use is, sometimes the data is a little bit Alta Vista-esque in terms of how we search around and find it, or even like a hoarder or unorganized bedroom, in terms of searching for that one sock, turning that into a high quality search, from Alta Vista to Google, in terms of how quickly can I find something, and then what can I do with it. That front end, that blocking and tackling, we have really high quality AI people, both on the government and contractor side. The ratio that I always hear is 80% to 20%. So 80% kind of data wrangling, cleansing, et cetera, and 20% actually like doing analysis. And analysis doesn't even necessarily mean BI or AI or et cetera. Just really flipping that is, I think, one of the things that isn't necessarily the sexiest thing in the world, but it's something that if we stay focused for long enough, then it will be it will produce the sexiest, right? So it is the BASF type work. To go throw back to show my age, that type of work is gritty and allows things to happen down the road, even if it's even if it's not as glamorous. So I've gravitated towards that for now, just because I think that like more trench work and the payload of like a few dedicated dozens or hundreds of people really digging something out could pave that next generation. We have a great STEM on-ramp of people. We have a lot of training going into place, and a lot of digital literacy activities going into place, so that people can get to that next level. We need to be ready for them with that payload. So I think some of my teams have taken up shovels in the meantime to get there.
Yeah, I mean, so it just sounds like even the workforce development has become a more important piece over the past couple of years. I'm sure that you've seen the training, the education, the retention has become a lot more important at your organization. Is that true?
I think people, I mean, my organization, I haven't been there for even 2 years yet. It might be 2 years now. I think it's been a good place to work for a long time, certainly longer than I've been there. But it's undeniable how people recognize human capital and talent as an asset and a resource, and I guess basically an outcome enabler from a healthcare perspective. We've always, I think, gotten great people and treated them well, but now understanding more specifically how they fit into success, and how building them up into an ecosystem of kind of spiral contributions where they keep coming back, keep doing different things, plugging in different ways, and get further on the problem, really taking care of them. Yeah, I think that's more widely seen. And I do, I'm never surprised to see people pop up different places in the ecosystem than I would have expected, just because once you have people with that base of knowledge, it's likely that they're going to find a way back to providing utility one place or another.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of nice that people keep coming back, and, kind of go out and then come back. I think that can say something about an organization. So, we talked about the music, we talked about healthcare, the human capital piece, a little bit into data. So I think we covered a lot here, but is there anything else that you'd like to share, or
Sure. So you're winning 1-0 against me in terms of pictures on the wall. I have one of the more boring Zoom backgrounds that I've seen, but I do. You asked about music, so I'm going to go off color here. So there's my I don't know if you see it in the background, but my trumpet lamp there. So that is, it's over my shoulder. You can't see it here, but that is my bit of flair that's covered up in my little 16-hour-a-day dungeon.
Oh, I even have a better painting, if you don't mind. I want to show this one to you.
Please.
This is quite the piece here. Here. You see that?
Oh, wow, that's gorgeous.
Yeah, we actually had 4 of them in the family, and then they got split with the children once my father passed away. I'd like for that to become my new, kind of like signature painting. But yeah, I'm actually quite the art fan, and I love music. So when you said you played the trumpet, I was really like excited because I used to play the trumpet. I was always like 3rd or 4th in high school.
Yeah, my playing the trumpet is pretty much I'm 9th. I am wiring trumpets exclusively at this point, but that light bulb coming out of it is better than any noise I would make.
Well, I gotta tell you, our teacher was amazing. She would let us all solo at the same time.
Wow.
So imagine being 16 years old and you've got 4 trumpets. 2 are really good, and then 2 are kind of subpar, and we're all making up our music as we go.
That's a brave teacher. We need more of those, always.
Yeah, I love her to pieces. She was her name's Cheryl Terwilliger. She's just, when you can get a music teacher that really loves the music, you can really learn a lot. And I've learned so much about jazz music from her. And so, I really credit a lot of what I've learned due to those classes, and they were just so much fun.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, anyways, thank you so much for your time. This has been really fun, and it was great to learn more about your music passions as well as a little bit about what you do. So thank you again.
Likewise, thank you.
Yeah.